Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Been spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Keep spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise. Keep spending most our lives living in a gangster's paradise.
3, 2, 1, roll 5.
In the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. Good evening, friends, and welcome to the 15th episode of Crime and Punishment, a legal podcast, not a political podcast, the official podcast of the Invictus Law Firm, PA, a criminal defense law firm in Orlando, Florida, the website for which is augustusinvictus.com. That is, of course, me, your host for the evening, and I am here with my trusty co-host, Tiger Jin. Several remarks before we begin this evening, and let me first make sure that we are, in fact, live and good to go. Yep, looks good. So we have done something different, you'll see. We have set up the premiere so that people can start joining a little early. Get in there and talk in the chat room before we broadcast live. We'll start doing that from now on. Tomorrow, we're going to do something of a little rebranding. It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be fun. In doing all of this, and of course, if you didn't know, let me just break the fourth wall here and explain to you that the point of a podcast in the professional world, it's entertainment, I suppose, but really what it is it's marketing. So for all of you out there who have a business or who have dreams of owning a business, you have to get into entertainment somehow. You have to provide free services or at least free information. Free PDFs or free guides to whatever it is your business does, free samples. You have to have a podcast or a YouTube channel or an Instagram page, especially like if you're a fitness instructor, right, a personal trainer, you have to have an Instagram page and you have to show all of your clients' transformations and you have to show how good looking you are, of course, because who's going to hire a fat personal trainer, right? So the entire point of a podcast is marketing. I will confess that today we were so busy that I was working literally to Coolio's intro right there, doing the last of my work, maybe not for the day, but at least for the next 2 hours. So as part of all this today, I did a lot of marketing work today, and I went through all of my emails for the past 2.5 years, it looks like. No, that can't be right. Maybe the past two... I can't believe that. It really was. The past 2.5 years, I've gone through all the emails since I got this email address. 2.5 years of emails. And I want to apologize to everyone right up front. If you have emailed this law office, you are getting an email this Friday. I promise you. Every single one of you. Anyone whose name has shown up in my email address at the law firm, you're getting an email this Friday. Because every Friday, we do the newsletter for the law firm, and I just pulled hundreds of email addresses from the law firm's email address. So if you're in there, you're getting an email. If you are not in there, let me fix that problem right now, because I'm going to give you the latest newsletter. Let's look this up. Issues. I told Tiger, and I will tell you, we're going to do a lot of this show on the fly tonight because, like I said, I was working all the way up until you and I and all of us heard Coolio singing his great hit, Gangster's Paradise. So a lot of this I'm going to do on the fly, and what I'm doing right now on the fly is I'm going into the broadcasting system and I'm putting in here, we are, by the way, simulcasting to YouTube, DLive, Twitch, Periscope, and in one fell swoop, I'm going to post this everywhere. Boom. That, at review, is the last issue of, or should I say the most recent issue, it's certainly not the last, of the law firm's newsletter. If you are not on the email list and you don't think you're in my email address and we pulled your email today, then go to that issue and you will see at the top, subscribe to our newsletter. The most logical thing for a professional newsletter company to put at the top of their thing. Review's actually a pretty decent system. So go to that link that just popped up in YouTube, go to review, put your email address in there so that you too can get the newsletter for this coming Friday. That's one of the many comments we have before we get to our weekly update about the Chauvin trial, and we get to Tiger wants to talk about the Noahide laws. We're going to do that. And I'll probably rant and rave about something or another, but let's continue talking about this. You can also go to Augustusinvictus.com. That is the law firm's website. You can type in your name there. We can pull up your email address that way. Probably easier to go to the link for review where the newsletter is and just put it in that way. But in case you're stubborn and you don't like newfangled technology, I am right now, boom, putting in the website address, AugustusInvictus.com. You can go there. There's an email capture. You can sign up that way. El Dragon says he signed up through my newsletter through Telegram. Thank you very much. And that reminds me, El Dragon, if you look into the description in this YouTube channel, you will see that I have the links for everything. Everything. Even my Instagram should be on there. You got Instagram, you've got, there we go. Official website, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook for my public self, Facebook for the law firm, Instagram, Telegram, and of course this YouTube channel. Why don't we have, well, we're supposed to have the DLive and all that stuff, but for some reason I didn't put that in there. In any event, sign up for the newsletter somehow. We've got a lot of changes coming. Next week we are going to have a big shilling operation. And that brings me to the real point of these comments. In going through all of these email addresses, all of these old emails for the past 2.5 years, I realized that we missed a lot of emails. Not for legal purposes, but for volunteer purposes. Now, Tiger and I, we love Big Brother. We have absolutely nothing to do with any activism. We have no political beliefs on this show. This is a legal podcast about legal news, legal theory, legal philosophy. But we do know some activists, a handful. And I realized in going through all these emails that I missed a lot of volunteers. We did not have a system for that. It is, after all, a law firm, not a professional campaign committee email address. But it did get me thinking. First of all, I want to apologize for anyone who wrote to that email address trying to volunteer for the things that we were doing at the time. And we didn't get back to you. That is 100% my fault. And I regret that. It made me think, though, that I need to say something on this program about how things have gone the past several years and about why certain things failed and why certain things will continue to fail until people start doing things differently. As you will know, and again, I have nothing to do with politics, but when I did, and I was running for president with the Republican Party, I went to Las Vegas as part of my campaign trip. And while I was there, I visited the casinos, not to gamble, but just as a tourist. I'm famously not a gambler. I absolutely do not have that bone in me. Whatever people think that's thrilling, I don't get it. I do not understand gambling. I guess I've just never had enough money to think that I could burn it. But I went to the casinos, and I realized in that single evening that everything we had been doing as an activist movement was wrong. Just not morally wrong, but incorrect. It came from a wrong-headed idea that you can do things purely on goodwill, purely on motivation, and the can-do spirit, right? Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. This is America, son. Get to the frontier. Well, people on the frontier, they were making money. They were getting land. They were industrious. They were turning that land into something that would provide for them and their families. And if you've been involved in right-wing activism for any amount of time, you know exactly where I'm going with this. Because everyone who sells a t-shirt on the internet is a shill. Everyone who wants to do a super chat on YouTube, and we will be doing super chats now, I promise you. Everyone who does super chats is a self-aggrandizing, self-promoting, selfish person who cares nothing about the movement. Anyone who sells their books on Amazon, and they're not just giving it away for free somehow, they're part of some Jewish conspiracy to steal right-wingers' money. Anyone who not even expects, but seeks or even comments about being compensated for what they do, whether it's an attorney or it's a graphic designer. We have lots of graphic designers, or they do. I'm not a right-winger. I have no political opinions, but if you're a graphic designer, you're a writer, you are a videographer, whatever it is you do. You're a farmer, you make t-shirts, whatever. It is a vast movement with many different talents. We had bankers. We had lawyers, obviously, private investigators, anything you could imagine. Someone in the movement fits that bill. And yet everyone was expected to provide those services to the movement free of charge. And not just that, but to do it at 100%. Not, well, let me see what spare time I can give, and if I can, knock off 5 hours a week, maybe I could, put it toward this network or that project or whatever. No, it was, look, you're supposed to dedicate every minute of your life to this and do not dare ask for a penny. That's insane. Obviously, that's insane. But podcast nationalism being what it was, everybody got swept up on that, and you could not talk about money without being viciously attacked. So, circling back to the point of this story, I was in Las Vegas that night on the campaign trip, walking through the casinos in Caesar's Palace, and I realized how wrong-headed this all was, everything that was being done. How are you going to hire attorneys without money? How are you going to have a chamber of commerce without money? How are you going to own media networks without money? How are you going to run a credit union without money? How are we going to do the simplest tasks in life without money? You can't even charge $15 for a t-shirt on Teespring without your own people tearing you down. How are you going to build a hospital or a school? Food for thought. So, I do apologize, coming back all the way to the beginning of this track, I do apologize for everyone whose email that we missed. In that time who was trying to volunteer for the things we were doing, but in my defense and the defense of everyone who worked with me and for me, we were doing it for free. And so was everybody else. All the volunteers, all the volunteer organizers, regional organizers, everybody. Naturally, we missed a lot of things. And I realized looking back on that probably we should have paid a volunteer organizer or 20, and things might have gone differently. Food for thought. So, sign up for the email list. Go to the newsletter thing that I put in the chat there at review. Put your email address in there. You will get the update for the upcoming marketing extravaganza. We're doing a reboot. I think it's going to be fun. In doing all of this, I have... it's a long personal story, but for the past 8 months, for those who do know me personally, I've been a little distant, I suppose, to put it very mildly. And I think about Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, which has been my favorite book since I was 14 years old. And in there, Zarathustra is awakened by his animals, the eagle and the serpent, the proudest animal under the sun and the wisest. And they say to him as the convalescent, that's the section it's in, the convalescent, that the world awaits you like a garden. Come out of your cave. So, that is where we are at. We're going to be doing a lot more things in the world. I will be coming back into action, not politically, of course. God forbid. God forbid. Not in this economy. So, we are broadcasting live on Twitch, DLive, Periscope, and YouTube, and I am here with my trusty co-host, Tiger Jin. That concludes all of my preliminary commentary. Tiger Jin, how are you doing tonight, buddy?
Good.
Always a man of few words.
Yeah.
I like it.
Going back to one of the things you were talking about lawyers advertising on social media, did you see any news lately? Actually, you might have actually sent me this about lawyers utilizing TikTok.
I don't know what article you're talking about, but I've seen a lot of that. Yeah, lawyers on TikTok. I
have not seen any of those actual. I never logged into TikTok once in my life. I barely know what it is.
Don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. I resisted using Twitter for years. To this day, I hate Twitter. I really can't stand any of it. I'm a very Anprim person, I suppose, but TikTok is just one I have too much dignity for. I can't do it. Can't do it.
I mean, based on what I know of it, it's just like 1 minute videos, right? Like,
yeah. I mean, that's about the same as having 40 characters on Twitter, right? Just whatever. Something quick to get out there and people consume it like
it seems
sugar.
Like, there's when you're advertising, one of the things you also have to think about is, are you going to where your customers are going to be? And my understanding of TikTok is it's a lot of juveniles, right?
Yeah, well, if you're in juvenile criminal law.
That might be the only, that I was going to say, that's the only thing I can think of.
A lot of teenage stoners in TikTok, buddy. Yeah. Another reason for full-grown men to stay away from it. Freedom Falcon. Freedom Falcon says, Pepperidge Farm remembers when everyone called everyone grifters. Oh, man. Those are the good old days, huh? Y'all youngins ain't veterans from these meme wars like we was.
Yeah, one of the big victories, though, that I want to say about, like, I guess they call it boycott today. Buying from people that you want to succeed. One of the biggest victories of doing that is organic foods. Because, I mean, I remember it was back, Seinfeld made jokes about eating organic food, that, like, it's something only crazy people do. And now look where we are with that today. Everybody was insisting, not everybody, but many were insisting, I'm only buying organic. I'll go wherever it takes to buy organic. And now, look, we got like a big Whole Foods chain nationwide now. Organic food. Walmart sells organic now.
Well, good. Good. There are some hippie things I will not countenance, but that's a good thing. The food we have, I won't get on another soapbox, but it's disgusting. It's revolting, the things we do to food. So good for them. Good for the hippies. They win this round.
Yeah.
Somebody asked in the chat, I just had it up, what happened to industrial society in its future video? Well, Dr. Kaczynski is not political. I think that's pretty clear. He's said it 1,000,000 times himself. But here's what happened. Since we're already on the topic of marketing, you will notice that all videos are gone. They're all gone. I removed everything from the internet that ever was. So anything that I did that was poetry recitation or literature or whatever it was, readings, it's gone. And that is because of what we call, in the entrepreneurial world, rebranding, right? So it was a huge marketing push. It took a lot of time to do, but everything was changed around, repackaged, rebranded. Everything is legal now. As I say at the beginning of every single one of these shows, we are not political. We have nothing to do with politics. So that's where it went. However, at dog74, yeah, your name's not coming up, but I'm going to do this just for you. My son wrote me the other day. I woke up to this message on Instagram, and my son said, "This is you. I know it's you. Don't even try to tell me it's not you." And I'm thinking, what is this? And I see that Hotel Transylvania, Dracula is on there, and he's screaming into a microphone. It's like some rock concert. It's the one with Adam Sandler. And I'm like, all right, what is this? Like, is he saying, like, I act like Dracula in Hotel Transylvania? Like, what is this? And so I opened the video, and he's just dancing around, and I click the thing so that I can hear the sound, and what to my wondering ears would appear but this sexy voice that you're hearing right now reading Dr. Kaczynski's Industrial Society and Its Future. Apparently this is some huge meme with the Zoomers, me reading Industrial Society and Its Future to Dracula at a rock concert. What a weird meme. But apparently it blew up. So I told my son, yes, that is me. As a matter of fact, Industrial Society and Its Future actually got pretty underground famous, my reading of it. So I took it off of private and just unlisted it. So, Dog74 Life, here you go. There is the link for Industrial Society and Its Future, unlisted. You can have it. Might felt cute, might privatize it later, who knows. So there you go, there you have it. So Tiger, what are we going to do first? I think we should just go through I'm going to go through the comments first, and then we'll get to Derek Chauvin. Unless you want to do Derek Chauvin last, and we'll do your Noahide stuff first.
Well, you're running the ship. I don't have a preference.
All right, well, let's go through the comments and then we'll decide what we're going to do. It's a freewheeling night tonight. China, that's right. China owns TikTok, don't they?
Yes, they do.
I forgot about that. Oh, and all of that, I should have scrolled down further. Apparently, my son already sent it to this person. So now all of you in the audience, you have the link there at the bottom for Industrial Society in its future. The Pot Brothers, yeah, on TikTok. Yeah, some lawyers have got it figured out. They've figured out how to do this broadcasting on Twitter. They do their 1-minute videos. It's hip for the kids. I just can't do it. I don't have the bandwidth to make 1-minute videos that are going to be hip for stoner kids watching TikTok. I can't, like, and think about that. Like, yeah, I'm sure there's 1% of those kids who are loaded with their parents' money. But really, in my experience, the kids who get in trouble, it's their parents who are paying the bills, especially if the kid is in jail. So really, and this is not for everybody in the audience, this is more for the attorneys listening to this. You might be aiming for the kids, but it's the parents who are going to make the decision as to who the attorney is. Right? So when your kid is watching Nickelodeon and he's 8 years old, like the cereal companies, who shall remain nameless because we're not getting sued on this show, will target your kids, right? About the cereal at the end of the rainbow, for instance. Or the toy companies, which we shall not name because we're not getting sued, they'll target your kids and say, hey, buy this XYZ. And of course, the parents are going to pay for that. But when the child is now 16, 17 years old and he's a stoner doing stupid things on TikTok and he gets arrested, this isn't buying a Nerf gun, right? This is paying for an attorney. So I don't know. When I see some empirical evidence that advertising on TikTok works for attorneys, I might have a different opinion. But for now, I'm going to be the old man who says, I'm never getting on there, these young whippersnappers.
I think it would be best to wait until if it ever does get to be a place where professionals are commonly found. Like Twitter and YouTube started off as just some internet nonsense, and now professionals are all over it. So it is worth its time and space as advertising. TikTok, though, I mean, I don't know if you want to be a trailblazer in something that's has a professional appearance.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, who would have thought that videos and podcasting and all that stuff on YouTube would be such a billion-dollar business? Where would that have come from? You know?
Yeah.
So maybe TikTok will take off. Twitter, it used to be, was like 40 characters. Like, what are you going to do with that? And they've extended it. You can do threads now. You can do all sorts of media with Twitter. It became its own animal, so that now every professional in the world has to be on Twitter. Like, I was in New York City once when I was younger. And, I mean, I was actually just in New York City the day before yesterday. But when I was younger, I was in New York City, and I was at a hotel, and I was watching TV, and Trump was on TV long, long before he was president. And he said, if you're not on TV, you don't exist. 100% true. And now, if you are not on Twitter, you do not exist. I doubt TikTok will be the same, but it goes to show you, as stupid as something looks, you never know how it's going to turn out.
Yeah.
Could evolve into what we have in Twitter now. So, the Who Do We Shoot video, that is on YouTube and everywhere else. I can't get rid of that, but it's not on my channel. I'll tell you that. Poem. I don't know which poem you guys are talking about. The poem on beauty. Oh. Brian Evans' poem. Yeah, that's a long story that we cannot talk about here. The Dracula meme. LOL. Alright, so that's all the comments. We're caught up. Let's talk about the Noahide laws maybe you can tell me what this is about. I mean, I know what the Noahide laws are, but what is the conspiracy theory we're going for? Not going for, but what are we talking about?
Yeah. Okay, so there's two conspiracy theories regarding Noahide laws, and I'm going to go through those first and then go into what exactly Noahide law is. And the first one is the one that's been around since the 90s. It started in 1991, where during the presidency of George Bush, Congress, they made an Education Day proclamation. And it's session law. It's a session law, which I'll get to, that's important, but it's listed as Public Law 102-14, House Joint Resolution 104. And it's simply titled Education Day USA. And you know what? I'll just read it. It's short.
Let's do that.
Whereas Congress recognizes the historical tradition of ethical values and principles which are the basis of civilized society and upon which our great nation was founded, whereas these ethical values and principles have been the bedrock of society from the dawn of civilization when they were known as the 7 Noahide laws, whereas without these ethical values and principles, the edifice of civilization stands in serious peril of returning to chaos, whereas society is profoundly concerned with the recent weakening of these principles that has resulted in crises that beleaguer and threaten the fabric of civilized society. Whereas the justified preoccupation with these crises must not let the citizens of this nation lose sight of their responsibility to transmit these historical ethical values from our distinguished past to the generations of the future. Whereas the Lubavitch movement has fostered and promoted these ethical values and principles throughout the world. Whereas Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, leader of the Lubavitch movement, is universally respected and revered, and his 89th birthday falls on March 26, 1991. Whereas in tribute to this great spiritual leader, the Rebbe, this, his 90th year, will be seen as one of education and giving, the year in which we turn to education and charity to return the world to the moral and ethical values contained in the 7 Noahide laws. And whereas this will be reflected in an international scroll of honor signed by the President of the United States and other heads of states. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled that March 26, 1991, the start of the 90th year of Rabbi Menachem Schneerson, leader of the worldwide Lubavitch movement, is designated as Education Day USA. The President is requested to issue a proclamation calling upon the people of the United States to observe such day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. Approved and signed by George Bush.
George H.W. Bush.
Yes.
So this is real. This really happened?
Yes.
So he signed this. The conspiracy theory then. If it exists, then what are we talking about?
So the conspiracy theory is that there's a few of them. It depends on which end of the conspiracy theory movement you go by, but generally people point to this and say that this makes Noahide law the law of the United States of America. And that is apparently why here and today in the United States of America, it is illegal to eat meat. Oh, wait, that didn't happen. That's one of the 7 Noahide laws. So just generally,
Nah.
You know, it doesn't follow at all. Now, there's another much more recent thing that people point to say that the United States is under Noahide law. And that was back just a few years ago, where the Sanhedrin sent President Bush a letter. I mean, not Bush. I made the same mistake as a certain congresswoman. President Trump in 2017 was sent a letter from the Sanhedrin calling him to follow the Noahide laws, saying, please uphold the Noahide laws.
Okay, but I'm still stuck on the no eating meat part. I really don't think that's one of the Noahide laws. I'm pretty sure that that's like about not mutilating an animal and eating part of it while it is still alive. Like people used to cut off a leg and keep the animal alive so that, because when you kill the whole animal, like the whole animal is now going bad. They didn't have salt, so it would just rot if you didn't eat the whole thing at once. So they would cut off a limb and keep it alive, and that is just insanely cruel. So one of the Noahide laws was, don't do that. Either kill it or don't kill it.
Yes. So you're actually right. The thing is that there's not a consensus on what all of the Noahide laws are. The 7 that are frequently referenced, and the one that you mentioned is typically put into those 7. Sometimes I'll see don't eat meat put into there. And the reason for that is the whole reason where Noahide laws come from is because when God flooded the earth, he said the entire world is guilty, it's sinful, it needs destroyed. Well, based on what? What law? What law was God judging the world by?
Right, the law that all human beings know.
Yes. Yeah. That is what the Noahide laws are. It's what did God command people not to do back before he flooded the earth? Mm-hmm. And to me, that's honestly just a very, very fascinating question, because there really isn't a straightforward answer to it. These 7 laws are actually typically taken from Genesis chapter 9. So immediately after the flood, when God gives Noah some rules, and they'll point at that. So there's 2 ways of looking at it. Noahide laws is either like before the flood, which is where I find it more fascinating, or the way that the modern Sanhedrin Jews look at it is Genesis chapter 9 and whatever else we can pull from the Talmud interpretations. And Genesis chapter 9, that's when God gives Noah some rules, and according to the Talmud, they would say these are the Noahide laws that are binding on everybody. And one of those is, that's the point where God said, now it's okay to eat animals. Now it's okay. Before then, everybody had to be vegan. So,
well, here's another crazy one for you. Like, whoa, no way. Like, how many Noahide laws are there? There's also a dispute as to how many commandments there are. Whether there's a Decalogue or the 10 Commandments, or whether there are actually 11.
Yes.
So, let's put that in our pipe and smoke it. All right, so conspiracy theory is that Noahide law is the law of the United States. Is that what we're arguing about? Who argues about this?
I see it quite often. I will see these infograph memes posted on social media where they'll always point to this public law here, which, again, it's a proclamation. So it's a session law. Session law is, those are essentially whenever Congress does anything. They write it down, it becomes a session law, and they are all titled public law, whatever. That's how they're numbered. Mm-hmm. They're not part of the United States Code, 18 USC 242, which I'll be talking about later. They're not a federal law like that. They're not a state code like you would see OCGA, something, like that's not what you just. I don't even get how all these websites, they'll print the session law in its entirety, and then they'll be like, see, this means that Noahide law is law of the United States and we're under this Jewish control. And it's like, no, it's just saying today is Education Day. That where it gets all of its flowery language from is,
okay, hold on,
honoring a respected Jewish leader.
Okay,
that's what it is.
I'm going to ask what everyone's asking in their minds. Did the Jews pay you to say that?
Oh, boy. No, I can't. I don't know. I'm going to be stumbling over my words now. I don't know.
All right. So it's not the law. Why not, though? I mean, if the president signed it, what is the difference between a law that goes into effect and a session law?
So something like this. So all laws start as session laws. So something that eventually, well, maybe not all, but something that goes through Congress, like I said, just about anything that they do is a session law first. So if you're looking at a very, very new law, it'll only exist as a session law for a little bit, like a state law, like their, I don't know, a speeding law or something. It'll exist as a session law first. Well, not. Anyway, whatever. They start as a session law first, then they'll later get codified into the state code or the federal code. But this particular one, this is a holiday proclamation. That's all it's doing. That's its purpose. So it is law. It is law that March 20th, 1991 is Education Day. Okay. That is what that session law is doing.
All right, I'm going to have to read this. Yeah, because Abraham Lincoln made one of those, and we have Thanksgiving, and we've had Thanksgiving for a long time now. It's definitely law. So you're saying that, yes, it made Education Day by law, but it didn't implement the Noahide law.
Yes, and as your Thanksgiving example, that has to go through executive order every single year. Federal holidays, they are signed by the president saying today is Christmas, today is Thanksgiving, today is President's Day. Today, you see these kind of things, they come through every single year, either through executive order or through these session laws.
So you're saying that President Biden can literally cancel Christmas. That's what I am hearing from you.
He could choose not to sign.
I'm sure you're not.
He might forget. That's a very realistic possibility.
Yeah, he could forget a lot of things, like signing Christmas into law. So you might not have heard this, I don't know, but there is a movement by the bishops here in America, in the United States, to prevent Biden from taking communion. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I don't know the full story. I heard something about that.
All right, well, here's the story in brief. Biden claims to be Catholic. And by all appearances, he goes to Mass. He visited his son's grave on Election Day. He appears to be a practicing Catholic, but at the same time, he is famously promoting abortion legislation, promoting funding for abortion, repealing everything under the Trump administration that had to do with banning abortion. He's just gone abortion wild. It's sick. Not that I'm making a political statement, I'm making a moral statement. And so are the Catholic bishops in America. And they're saying, well, no real Catholic is going to be supporting abortion, even in private. And this is the President of the United States who is actively promoting abortion all around the world and funding it, for the love of God. So, Biden should not be allowed to take communion until he repents of that and fixes what he has done. That's the movement going on right now.
And that would make sense to me if you are going against the dictates of a church that you claim to be a part of, then yeah, they would. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. And I'm surprised that maybe it happens to a lot of other politicians, because there's a lot of them out there saying that they're Catholic, they're Christian, they support abortion, and that goes against the official dictates of whatever church they're saying that they're a part of.
You know have you ever heard of a show called The Young Pope? It's an HBO show with Jude Law. It's really interesting. I don't know how this came on air at all, but it straight up points out that a lot of the Catholic clergy are homosexual. How does something like that get on TV? There's this whole movement that he is making, the Pope, the new Pope, to rid the Catholic Church of homosexuality, and his Secretary of State is saying, do you not understand the ramifications of ridding the Catholic Church of homosexual priests? Like, do you have any idea how many priests there are in the Catholic Church that are homosexual? And he says, yeah, 2/3. Like, I want them all gone. That's crazy. But
so is this just a TV show, or is it documenting something?
No, absolutely not real. Yeah, it's definitely a TV show.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely fantastical. The Pope is an American, and Jude Law is actually an excellent American, believe it or not. I mean, he's excellent at everything, but yeah, it's all fiction. But it brings home the point that there are a lot of people claiming to be Catholic who are not, and funding abortion from Boston to Mozambique to Australia is just clearly not in line with that doctrine. Why were we talking about this? What were we? We were talking about the Noahide laws, right? Oh, and Biden forgetting to sign the executive order that gives us Christmas as a holiday, right?
You know, while we're still in Noahide laws, we gotta read what the 7 commonly agreed upon ones are. I feel like that would be important, just so people know what these are. So, 1 is do not worship idols. 2 is do not curse God. 3 is do not commit murder. 4 is a number of sexual immoralities they'll put in there: adultery, bestiality, sexual immorality.
All
5
bad.
is yes. 5 is do not steal. 6 is, as you said, do not eat flesh from a living animal. 7 is my favorite: establish courts of justice. And these, most of these come from Genesis chapter 9. The courts of justice one, they try and I don't know how they get out of it exactly, but it's in 9:5 and 9:6. Let's read it from the Lexham English translation here. You know what? I'll just start from the first one. Just get a little bit of Bible in here. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. And fear of you and dread of you shall be upon every animal of the earth, and on every bird of heaven, and on everything that moves upon the ground, and on all the fish of the sea. And to your hand they shall be given. Every moving thing that lives shall be for you as food. As I gave the green plants to you, I have now given you everything. So people are no longer vegan at this point. Only you shall not eat raw flesh with blood in it. Some will say that don't eat blood is one of the Noahide laws.
Right. Kosher diet.
Yep. And then 5 is, and your lifeblood I will require from every animal, I will require it. And from the hand of humankind, from the hand of each man to his brother, I will require the life of humankind. As for the one shedding the blood of humankind, by humankind his blood shall be shed, for God made humankind in his own image.
So that's where established courts of justice comes from.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yes. It's so
interesting.
I like that. I mean, the Bible is very, very legal. There's a lot of legal imagery, a lot of legal doctrines in it. It's very fascinating from that perspective.
You know, the whole Old Testament is fascinating from that perspective. I think I told you about this off air personally, but I read the entire Bible cover to cover while I was in jail, right? And I read the New Testament. I read that first, and then I read the Old Testament. And it was amazing that when you hear the Christ say, the 2 greatest commandments are love God and love your neighbor, right? You go back to the Old Testament with that in mind, and that actually is the entire law. Very literally. You go back and you read the Old Testament laws, and yeah, sure, they're, put the women outside the camp when they're on their cycle, don't eat shellfish, little things like that. But really, all of the laws come down to help widows, take care of orphans. Don't do wrong to other people. And it really does fall into one of those two things. Love God or love your neighbor. So the legalism that is famous in the Jewish religion, especially when you leave the Torah and you go into the Midrash and Halakha and all of that stuff, it really does come down to those two things that are in the New Testament. And you throw everything else away, it comes down to those two things. Like, don't murder, don't commit adultery, don't covet your neighbor's things. All of that comes down to love your neighbor. Every single one of these things comes down to those two categories. So it is interesting reading the Bible from a legal perspective. When you've gone through law school, you practice law, you go back and read the Bible that you read when you were a kid, and it turns out it's a legal document. The entire way through, cover to cover, it's a legal document. Yeah. It's amazing.
And I mean, not even only that, but even just a lot of the visions of heaven and of judgment. They're literally court scenes, ancient court scenes, that they would play, that would be played out in heaven. Some of the visions of heaven would be like a court scene. So probably the most familiar, without going into the more esoteric ones, would be like Job. That whole thing. The Satan, he's literally the prosecutor, and he's going to God.
The accuser, yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. So Agatha is talking about some technicalities in the Noahide laws. I was going to say we're not going to talk about, well, let's talk about, we're already talking about the bloody Noahide laws. We've got 8 minutes till we got to talk about Chauvin anyway. So she's saying the proponents of the Noahide laws think worshiping Jesus is idolatry, which is worthy of the death penalty. Have you ever seen Hail Caesar, the Coen Brothers movie?
No, man, no.
Oh, yeah. Well, I watch a lot of that stuff, so I got to keep up with pop culture. And there's a scene in there where Josh Brolin is heading the roundtable discussion with a Catholic priest, a Jewish rabbi, an Orthodox priest, and a Protestant pastor. And they're debating whether it's okay, this scene from the movie Hail Caesar that depicts the Godhead, and they're all arguing about it. And the Jewish rabbi, his repeated criticism is, Jesus is not God. You can't depict that on TV. And that's what Agatha's talking about, that worshiping Jesus is idolatry because God cannot have an image. So that's up for debate between the Jews and the Christians, I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if we want to turn this into a religion podcast.
I don't think we have time to.
Yeah.
Eventually we're going to have to get to the news.
Yeah.
But I am going through the comments here. Did you feel, the inundation asks, to yours truly, did you feel like Jonah in the belly of the whale, Augustus Invictus Esquire? I suppose that particular analogy had not occurred to me, to be quite honest. I will point out, one interesting thing about Catholicism is that the Catholics understand that some of these stories are not, I won't say not real, but they are literary, let's say. So Jonah especially is one of those stories where they don't take it quite literally. They understand it as a literary work. And one of the things that clues you into that is that when the king, they know that their entire country is about to be leveled by God Almighty for their sins. So they declare a fast, and everybody's to wear black to repent of their sins. And it says in the book of Jonah, all of the men wore black and fasted, all of the women, all of the children, even the livestock wore black and fasted. So the cows and the pigs, they're all fasting to repent for the sins. Obviously, that is a caricature. Obviously, animals do not fast to repent for the sins of the nation. And then at the end of it, when they have successfully fasted and shown their repentance, Jonah's all upset about it because he really wanted them all to be destroyed because they had offended him personally, not just God, but they offended Jonah. So he's sitting there pouting about this, that God has forgiven them. And God comes to him and he says, "What's your problem?" And he's like, "Well, this shade isn't shading me enough, and these people aren't destroyed, and this fruit sucks." And so it's kind of a satire, not a satire. That's maybe a strong word, but it's a caricature. The story is an extreme, and it's to show you the moral principle of accepting that God forgives people even when you don't, right? So to answer your question directly, no, I did not feel like Jonah in the belly of the whale, not because of the story per se, but just because I guess it hadn't occurred to me. I felt more like Joseph, to be quite frank. And for those who don't know that story, I would recommend reading the book of Genesis. Joseph was famously sold into slavery by his own brothers. He was betrayed and sold. Sent down to Egypt. He finally gets there and is enslaved to Potiphar. His wife, not Joseph's wife, but Potiphar's wife, tries coming on to him and falsely accuses Joseph of misconduct. And Joseph is imprisoned on this woman's word with fake evidence. So that is what I felt like. All Jonah. Freedom Falcon says, true religion is taking care of widows and orphans of the world. I like that. Well said, Freedom Falcon. That also would bring up Hinduism, or Sanatana Dharma, as they call it themselves. If you read the Vedas, that's exactly what it's about. Taking care of others, especially the Bhagavad Gita, right? And I think we talked about this before on this show. The Bhagavad Gita is a religious text that is inside another religious text, the Mahabharata. That is a massive epic of the Bharata dynasty. And inside of that, Krishna talks to Arjuna on the battlefield, and he explains to him all the secrets of the universe, and that is called the Bhagavad Gita. And in there it says exactly what Freedom Falcon is saying, that true religion is selflessness and not letting yourself be polluted by the world. So very well said, Freedom Falcon.
And that exact sentiment is often spoken exactly by Jesus. Do not be of the world, take care of others. It's very, yeah.
That's also Taoism. If you read the Tao Te Ching, and I know a lot of Christians will be offended in hearing this on this program, but a lot of these religions have the same principles. Even what we think of as enemy religions. You read the Quran. Islam is very much the same thing. Take care of widows and orphans. Take care of the weak. Fight for your tribe. Fight for God. All things should be the will of God. It's very much the same message throughout all of these religions. El Dragon suggests that we talk about Thucydides' Peloponnesian War.
Once I finish it, maybe.
Oh, you haven't finished it. Oh.
Yeah, right.
I would recommend
I
recommend to you, Tiger, if I haven't already, and to everybody in the audience, get the landmark Thucydides. Is that the copy you have?
No, I have probably one of the earlier first English translations. I got an old copy.
Okay, forget that. Throw it away. Go burn that book. Get the landmark Thucydides.
I'm familiar with translation work. Newer translations are better. Yeah.
It's not about the translation. It's about the maps.
Oh.
So when you are reading Thucydides, it's telling you all of these places. It's telling you the Athenians went from here to there. It's telling you this dialogue happened in Melos. You have no idea where any of these places are. You have no idea how far Alcibiades traveled to do this, that, or the other. If you have the landmark Thucydides, you know everywhere everybody's been. And there's a whole series of these. So there's the landmark Civil War of Julius Caesar. There's the landmark Xenophon telling about the campaigns of Alexandria. Of Alexander the Great.
When you say landmark, are these those old hardcover books aimed at like young adults?
Yes, well, no, I don't think they're aimed at young adults. They do have them in hardcover. My copy of Thucydides is hardcover, but they do sell them in paperback now too, so they are cheaper. But I would recommend that to everybody, whether you're reading Xenophon, Julius Caesar, Thucydides. Get the landmark version so that you can see where these campaigns are taking place and you can really follow along with the story.
Okay, yeah, this is a different landmark. I was thinking, I actually own, and it's a common thing for homeschoolers and for people looking to homeschool their children. I was homeschooled, and I got the entire a bunch of history books called the Landmark books, and that is what my kid will be reading.
Nice.
So
nice. Well,
you're talking about a different book series.
Okay. Well, everybody get that, and El Dragon, eventually, let's talk about Thucydides. We've been doing topical shows for the past month, maybe month and a half.
Yeah.
Eventually, we'll do texts, we'll do Thucydides. That's an excellent suggestion. Actually, in going through those 2.5 years of emails today, I was going to say something else, but in going through all of those, I came upon an email with somebody asking me for basically educational advice and not mentorship per se, but basically point me in the right direction. And I gave him the reading list that I had made. And it has Thucydides front and center. You have to read the Peloponnesian War.
Yes.
And I recommend read it with the map so you can follow along, but it is absolutely essential to understanding politics. Period. I don't care who you are. That being said, speaking of the emails, boom, there it is in the chat again. It is the top of the hour, so all of you who are late to the party, Jim Bowden, Australian, sign up for the email list and you will get the newsletter this Friday. We missed a lot of volunteer emails. I'm going to try to remedy everything I can. But let's start with rebuilding everything from the ground up, and let's get the newsletter operative, if nothing else. So, we have less than an hour now. Let's talk about the Chauvin trial. So,
all right.
So last week we discussed Chauvin's trial, the aftermath thereof, and we talked for an hour about this juror, Brandon Mitchell, who went all over the internet doing multiple interviews, bragging about how he had lied to get on the jury. They asked him point blank, have you ever been to a BLM protest? And he said no. Photos surfaced of him at a BLM protest, a big one, of him wearing a shirt of George in the interviews. This guy's a hero. His legacy is going to live on. There will be real change in America. And we have to get on juries to effect change like this. This is how change is going to come about. So he's deliberately telling the whole world, yes, I lied to get on the jury in order to effect a guilty verdict. And this is how we're going to effect change in this country. So, we said in last week's show, at this point, a new trial is absolutely inevitable. If there is not a new trial for Derek Chauvin, the entire justice system is a joke. It is admitting that it is a fraud. So, guess what came out last week, right after the show? The motion to dismiss. I'm sorry, the motion for new trial. So we had the show last Monday. Motion for new trial came out Tuesday, the very next day. And then, wonder of wonders, 2 days after that, 2 days after they file a motion for a new trial that everybody knows they're going to win, you have to give the guy a new trial after what has just come out about them deliberately lying to get on the jury to convict him. So as soon as that comes out, and it's clear he's going to get a new trial, guess what happens? The United States government files their indictment against him. Incredible. So, let's talk about both of those. You've got both of them up, notice for new motion for new trial and the indictment?
Yes, I do.
All right. So, for an order granting a new trial pursuant to Minnesota Rule 26.04, Subdivision 1 on the following grounds. The interests of justice. Abuse of discretion that deprived the defendant of a fair trial. Prosecutorial and jury misconduct. Errors of law at trial. And a verdict that is contrary to law. Those are several heavy grounds. So, what a motion is. Here's Law Practice 101 for you. A motion is where you, as the lawyer or the pro se party, you are moving the court to do something. You are filing this piece of paper, or if it's ore tenus, meaning by mouth, spoken, you are moving the court to act in a certain way. So they are filing a motion with the court to move the court to grant the defendant a new trial. In making a motion, you have to give grounds. You have to have legal grounds for your motion. I've seen a lot of motions where people say, well, I want this, Judge. And they don't actually have a reason for it except, well, that's what I want. What I want is not legal grounds. I find this inconvenient is not legal grounds. I don't like what's going on here is not legal grounds. You have to have legal grounds based in the law. So right at the outset, what he's saying is there was an abuse of discretion. That means the judge messed up somehow. It's in the interest of justice. The verdict is contrary to law. Those are legal grounds. Prosecutorial misconduct, meaning the prosecutors did something very wrong. Jury misconduct, that's what the last week's show was about. The jury, obviously there was jury misconduct. It's all over the news. You can't avoid that. Errors of law at trial. I don't know what it specifically he's getting into, but these are the grounds. And so now, that is paragraph 1 of the motion. Now we're going to go in these subparagraphs. So this is going to be explaining those grounds, right? Paragraph 2, in order for a hearing to impeach the verdict on the grounds that the jury committed misconduct, felt threatened or intimidated, felt race-based pressure during the proceedings, and or failed to adhere to instructions during deliberations in violation of Mr. Chauvin's constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial. So this is something we have talked about before, over and over on the show. I don't like cops, and everybody knows it because of what cops have done to me, and everybody, or many people that I know. I don't like them. And I've deliberately been, until all this happened, in the past several weeks, I've been agnostic about the trial. I don't get involved in it. But now, you are forced to get involved in it. And my own son called me out on the show a couple weeks ago because I've said to him 1,000,000 times since he was born, just like my dad said to me 1,000,000 times since I was born, because he's a criminal defense attorney too, your client is not the issue, dude. Your client is not what you're defending. You are defending the Constitution. So we're not defending Derek Chauvin. I don't know Derek Chauvin. Tiger, you don't know Derek Chauvin, right? Right. We've never met him, never had a beer with him, never exchanged emails with him. I don't know the guy. I'm not defending him. What we are defending is the Constitution. And that is what is in paragraph 2 of this motion. All of this is in violation of Mr. Chauvin's constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial. Mr. Chauvin is irrelevant. What is relevant is this can happen to each and every one of us if this is allowed to happen to Derek Chauvin. It doesn't matter whether you, at this point, it genuinely does not matter if you think that he murdered George Floyd. That is absolutely out the window at this point. It doesn't matter if he killed him or not. If you are convinced that Derek Chauvin is a murderer, it doesn't matter anymore. After what happened at that trial, his guilt or innocence is totally irrelevant and immaterial. All that matters is jury misconduct, judicial misconduct, prosecutorial misconduct, the numerous constitutional violations that happened in that trial. And you know that I mean this because I don't like cops. I am certain that Derek Chauvin has committed constitutional violations left and right in his time as a police officer, because many of them do, right? I do not have a high opinion of police officers. But this is far bigger than our personal grudges, and at this point it's far bigger than even guilt or innocence. This goes to the very heart of our entire legal system, because if this is allowed to go down the way it has, if he doesn't get a new trial now, it's over. It's all over the news. It would be like someone stealing an election in broad daylight. That would be Soviet Russia. That couldn't possibly happen here. Just like in Soviet Russia, sure, you could use a scapegoat, set somebody up. Doesn't matter if they're guilty or innocent. You rig the jury. You have jurors lying to get on there to convict the guy. You have prosecutors hiring people from all over the country to help convict this guy in a show trial. You have all these numerous problems. In America, during the Cold War, we'd have crucified the Soviet Union in the press for something like has happened to Derek Chauvin. So, that's paragraph 2. Paragraph 3, for an order granting the defense additional time to thoroughly brief the above issues in light of the time that was required for preparation of partial transcripts of the proceedings. So, the proceedings are all recorded, right? You have the right to a public trial under the Constitution. When you get there, there's going to be a recording made because you don't want to have secret trials in the middle of the night like they did to Jesus Christ. That's why the New Testament drama was such an issue. It was so horrid because they kidnapped him in the middle of the night, took him to the court, didn't tell anybody what was going on, did it in the middle of the night so that no one could see it, right? And totally railroaded him. That's why that whole story was a problem, if you don't remember that from Sunday school. You can't do that. You have to have a public trial. You have to have it recorded. Everybody has to know what's going on. It's got to be transparent what's going on. So what they're saying in paragraph 3 is they've got to order transcripts. Transcripts take a long time to transcribe, right? You've got... How long was that trial, Tiger? Weeks?
Sure. Yeah, 4 weeks.
4 weeks. My goodness gracious. So yeah, that's a lot of transcripts. It's going to take a while. So they've got to wait for stuff like that. They've got to make more... they've got to brief this, which means... So this is a motion, right? I predict they are going to write a brief in support of this motion, and that takes a long time, not just to study the legal arguments and the case law that has preceded this, but also to transcribe everything so that they can quote people. They can quote the prosecutor and point out his misconduct. They can quote the jury and point out that Brandon Mitchell said, no, I've never been to a Black Lives Matter protest. So that's going to take a while. So that is the motion in general. We're going to go through the subparagraphs to say what exactly they're specifically saying went wrong. But Tiger, you have any comments before we go there?
Just a quick one that popped into my head about the juror. So people, of course, they've been going back to looking at the recording of when he was being questioned. One of the things that he said was that he didn't think Chauvin had intent. That they wouldn't find any intent that Chauvin killed. So, I mean, yeah, and this is the guy who had the shirt. Oh, get your knee off our neck. Like, yeah. So just, he was lying all over the place. But let's get into it.
All right. Well, the specific bases for this motion include, but are not limited to, A, the court abused its discretion when it denied defendant's motion for a change of venue. So, change of venue, as you probably know, as you definitely know if you followed the Rise Above movement case a couple years ago, change of venue, or the James Fields case. Change of venue is when the local populace is so outrageously prejudiced against your client, or against the defendant, rather, that you have to move the trial. So, Charlottesville, for instance, James Fields, everybody's up in arms about it. You file a motion to change venue because James Fields cannot get a fair trial in Charlottesville. Well, that didn't happen. And he went to trial and he was convicted to life plus 419 years. Had that trial been moved out of Charlottesville and moved to, say, Richmond, Virginia, or anywhere else, it might have gone differently. And that's what they're saying here in paragraph 1, subparagraph A of the motion for new trial for Derek Chauvin, is that the judge abused his discretion when he refused to allow the change of venue for Derek Chauvin because he could never have gotten a fair trial in that city. And that seems clear now in hindsight, right? Riots on the verge of breaking out every day. Jurors who were not sequestered, who were walking back and forth through these crowds, knowing that they could get soup cans or bricks thrown at them, knowing that they could get doxxed and have people show up at their houses. Obviously, there was pressure on the jurors. Might not have happened if it were in a different city. Who knows? So that's subparagraph A. The court abused its discretion because it refused to change the venue. Subparagraph B. The court abused its discretion when it denied defendant's motion for a new trial on the grounds that, quote, publicity during the proceedings threatened the fairness of the trial, end quote. Such publicity included post-testimony but pre-deliberation intimidation of the defense expert's witnesses. The defense's expert witnesses, from which the jury was not insulated. Not only did such acts escalate the potential for prejudice in these proceedings, they may result in a far-reaching chilling effect on defendant's ability to procure expert witness, especially in high-profile cases, to testify on their behalf. The publicity here was so pervasive and so prejudicial before and during this trial that it amounted to a structural defect in the proceedings. So, Tiger, you were intimately familiar with this trial. What is he talking about? The publicity threatened the fairness of the trial because of intimidation of defense expert witnesses? Who was intimidated?
So, I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was the defense's use of force expert.
Okay.
And they found and blood thrown over this guy's house after he was done testifying.
What?
Yes. Yeah.
Say that again. I must have heard you wrong. They found a what? A severed pig's head and blood over it?
Yes. Over the defense expert witnesses' home.
I don't suppose they caught these people or even investigated it.
I really don't know.
Where are the feds on that one?
Yeah. Yeah, so that's what he's talking about.
So that checks out. All right. I don't know if that's a grounds for new trial, though. I hate to be pedantic here, but
yeah, because one of the things is that it happened after the guy was done testifying. Yeah.
Now, if they had roughed him up before he got on the stand, or if they said, "Listen, man, if you get on that stand, we're gonna sever a pig's head and cover your door in it and the blood," that would be intimidation that would grant a new trial. I don't know if intimidating him afterwards for what he did is going to get a new trial, though.
Yeah.
I guess we'll see what the court says about that. I would predict that the court is going to say, all right, we'll grant you the new trial on the grounds that Brandon Mitchell is an activist who lied to get on the jury. And they're going to ignore everything else.
Better reasons in this motion for a new trial.
Right. Sometimes you put in your motion something that you don't 100% think is going to fly, but you do it to tell your story, to get your point across, to say, and sometimes totality of the circumstances is a good argument, where you say, look, based on everything that has happened, the totality of the circumstances, there should be a new trial, because all of these things adding up means that he didn't get a fair trial. Now, in this case, in Derek Chauvin's case, there are specific things that each one of these singularly, obviously totality of the circumstances, but section B in here, subsection B, about the pig's blood thing, I don't think it would stand on its own, but totality of the circumstances analysis, I think it would grant him a new trial. Subsection C.
That's exactly, I think what he's getting at here is that's exactly the type of thing many of these witnesses were fearing. They knew that things like this could happen to them. And it might be, he says in here, that they had difficulty procuring witnesses. I mean, he might be saying, like, there's some people who were like, there's no way I'm going to testify for you in this trial. There's just no way.
Well, except I think that, let me look up here again, but I think, they may result in a far-reaching chilling effect on defendants' ability to procure expert witness to testify on their behalf. That apostrophe is at the end of the S. So he's saying that if we don't give Derek Chauvin a new trial, future defendants, plural, will have a problem getting expert witnesses. So this is like what we call in law school a floodgates argument. If we don't fix this now, it's going to open the floodgates for these people to do these terrible things. And all future defendants, plural, will be disadvantaged in their trials because no one will testify on their behalf if there's a public spectacle like this. Let's go to subsection C. The court abused its discretion when it failed to sequester the jury. Okay, well, we've talked that to death. There you go. Jury intimidation, potential fear of retribution among jurors. Okay, so that's subsection C. That's an obvious one. Subsection D. The state committed pervasive, prejudicial, prosecutorial misconduct, which deprived Mr. Chauvin of his constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial, including but not limited to disparaging the defense, improper vouching, and failing to adequately prepare its witnesses. Well, that's an interesting accusation. Failing to adequately prepare its witnesses. Do you know what that's about, Tiger?
That's what I was just looking at. Is he saying that the prosecutors failed to properly prepare the prosecutor's own witnesses, or is he saying that...
That's what it looks like. And I've never seen a lawyer say, well, we want a new trial because they didn't prepare their own witnesses well enough. You usually want the other side not to prepare, right? That's an interesting accusation. I gotta say, I've never seen that one before. Disparaging the defense, we talked about that one last week.
Yep.
That's, the prosecutor was saying during closing arguments that this is nonsense. What the defense is saying is nonsense. You can't do that. So we predicted there would be a motion for new trial based on that alone, and here it is. Do you know what the improper vouching one is?
I'm not even sure I know what that means, honestly.
All right. You know what? The state committed pervasive, prejudicial prosecutorial misconduct. I didn't watch the trial, so I'm not sure what they're getting at there, but if you come up with it while I'm reading Section E, you let me know. Subsection E, the court abused its discretion and violated Mr. Chauvin's rights under the Confrontation Clause when it failed to order Maurice Hall to testify, or in the alternative, to admit into evidence Mr. Hall's statements to law enforcement regarding his interactions with George Floyd and presence at the May 25th, 2020 incident. All right, who is Maurice Hall, Tiger?
All right, I don't think I got a chance to talk about this on the show while it was going on.
I don't think you did either, because that's a very distinctive name that I think I would have remembered.
So Maurice Hall is the man who was sitting in the passenger seat with George Floyd when he got arrested. And Maurice Hall, we also know, is George Floyd's drug dealer.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yes.
Yes, this is ringing a bell now.
So what happened was, in the defense's opening statements, he said, you will see Maurice Hall testify, and he's going to talk about this, that, and the other thing. Well, when it came time to get Maurice Hall, he got the amendment because he would have to. He gave, under Minnesota law, the drug dealers, they can be liable for the death of somebody they give drugs to who dies of an overdose. So he pled the fifth, but the judge would not allow Hall to go onto the stand and be called as a witness. He wouldn't allow it. There was a little something going on for a little bit where the judge was like, okay, you can give me a list of questions that you want to ask him, and then I'll go over and check over. But ultimately, it was decided he would not allow Hall to get on the stand.
Interesting. Okay. All right, well, that's subsection E. Subsection F, the court abused its discretion when it submitted instructions to the jury that failed to accurately reflect the law with respect to second-degree unintentional murder, third-degree murder, and authorized use of force. So I believe, again, I didn't watch the trial, But I believe this is the meme out there about how amazing it is that Derek Chauvin could be convicted of both intentionally and unintentionally killing the same guy. Is that your understanding of subsection F?
Yeah, and in fact, I mentioned that on your show, how there's a problem of mixed intent with these.
Right.
And now something about the jury instructions during the trial is that was a portion of the trial that was not recorded. We didn't actually get to see them argue over what the jury instructions would be. And I personally have not even seen these jury instructions. So I don't know what the jury was told. I think the instructions are out there, though.
The truth is out there.
Yeah.
Subsection G. The court abused its discretion in violation of Mr. Chauvin's constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial when it permitted the state to present cumulative evidence with respect to use of force. Now, I'm assuming did they have multiple expert witnesses on use of force? Is that what happened?
Yeah, 8 of them.
What? What?
Yes.
8 expert witnesses on the use of force? Shut up. No, you have to be wrong on that. There's no way a judge would allow that.
Well, he did.
I would be amazed if they'd allow 3. 2 is pushing it. 8 expert witnesses on the use of force. That is unheard of. Okay, well, that alone is a grounds for new trial. I agree with the defense on that one. All right.
And I want to say to anybody else who has watched the trial, the defense, they put up what a trial would normally look like. You put up one witness and one expert for each issue. Right. That's not just because experts are expensive, but because there is a rule of evidence that you cannot provide cumulative evidence. Right. So what the state was doing, they had every single person who saw George Floyd die testify, even though they were all standing in the same place from the same angle, seeing the same thing. You had every single one up. Normally in a trial, you just have one guy up there because of this rule of cumulative evidence.
Right, because when you have 8 expert witnesses testifying to the same thing, you have a jury saying, well, they've got 8 expert witnesses. If this were wrong, there wouldn't be 8 of them saying the same thing. And the defense, they only have 1 expert witness. So who wins there? That's human nature. Bandwagon effect. You have 8 experts saying, this guy murdered that guy. The jury is naturally going to believe. I can't believe they let the prosecution get away with that. That's incredible. That alone is a new trial right there, if you ask me. Oh my goodness. All right. Subsection H. The court abused its discretion in violation of Mr. Chauvin's constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial when it ordered the state to lead witnesses on direct examination. Wait, what do you mean it ordered the state? Did you see this? Allowing the state to do this is problematic.
An actual order to lead the witnesses. Yeah, I'm not sure what
we might have to wait for the brief on that so they can further explain what they mean by that. But here's the issue. So on direct examination, that means this is your witness. So the state called this witness. They are a witness for the state. They're friendly. So the state doesn't have to ask them yes or no questions or leading questions. The state just asks, tell me what happened. What happened next? They give them room. They are allowed to talk. Conversely, when the defense then gets up, they cross-examine that person. Then you only ask questions you know the answer to, and you ask very direct questions requiring a specific answer that you are looking for. Well, isn't it true that XYZ? That's a yes or no. Well, isn't it true that ABC? That's a yes or no question. You don't want to give them any wiggle room. So when a lawyer brings up a witness on their own and they're doing direct examination, leading them is improper. Generally speaking, I'm sure there circumstances where that's okay, but in most circumstances, you don't lead your own witness. You're basically testifying in that event. And it's a proper objection to say, objection, leading the witness, right? So if the prosecutor is getting up there and asking its own witness, well, what happened? What happened next? Then what did you do? That's okay. You can do that. But if the prosecutor is saying, did you then get in the car? Was it a brown car? Were you wearing your brown blazer at the time? Did you then light a cigarette? Obviously, you can't ask questions like that. That is not proper form. So that's what that means when it said when the grounds would be that the state was leading its witnesses and there was an objection and that objection was overruled. That would be a weak grounds for overruling or for granting a new trial. But what they're saying is the court actually ordered the state to lead its own witnesses, and I can't imagine that either. You don't know what that's about, Tiger?
I know there was a lot of leading on direct. I just don't know that it was ordered. I don't recall that.
That's unheard of. I'm interested in seeing this brief just to know what that's about.
And when I saw the leading, I always thought I was thinking the prosecutor was getting away with it. The judge was allowing it. And the defense wasn't even objecting most of the time because it was just like, we got 8 witnesses to get through here. Lead them. Just let's get this over with. Because sometimes it'll be in the discretion and allowed just for the sake of efficiency.
Trial strategy, yeah. Well, and that's maybe what happened behind the scenes. Perhaps there was a sidebar or a hearing that everyone was shut out of where they actually had this argument and the state said, look, in the interest of time or because of reasons X, Y, and Z, we want to be able to lead this witness, and the defense might have raised Cain about it and the judge made his order. Maybe that's why behind the scenes this happened and that's why the defense didn't object during the examination. That's my best guess.
Behind the scenes, the next bullet point here talks about that.
All right. The court abused its discretion, this is subsection I, in violation of Mr. Chauvin's constitutional rights to due process and a fair trial, when it failed to order that a record be made of the numerous sidebars that occurred during the trial. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Why would you not record that? And maybe that's exactly what happened. Maybe that's why it's subsections H and I right next to each other, because that is what happened. There was a sidebar and the defense said, look, man, he's leading these witnesses or whatever it was. And the court said, no, you lead the witnesses. And that was that. Maybe all that happened in the sidebar. And now they're saying that wasn't recorded. So we can't even argue about it on appeal.
And there was a lot of sidebars. It happened quite frequently. And, we could only speculate what was going on because obviously we couldn't hear the sidebars.
So elementary point, let's back up the truck a little bit. A sidebar is when you say to the judge, basically, time out, let's talk about this. And you and the other lawyer for the other side, you go up to the bar, which is where the judge is sitting, right? You go up to his desk, basically, and you argue it out away from everybody else. You're whispering, right? In some jurisdictions, they will press a white noise button so that nobody can hear what you're whispering. And you're talking really soft to each other. No one else in the courtroom can hear you. And you're talking about something private, whatever that is. Maybe there's confidential information that other people in the courtroom can't know. Maybe there's something that was discussed in what's called a motion in limine, where there's evidence that is being specifically excluded from the trial. And you can't talk about it in public. Or maybe there's been evidence that is being sealed and the jury can't hear about it, right? Whatever the reason is, you go to a sidebar, you talk about it in private, and then you go back to your respective tables and the trial continues. So what they're saying is during those sidebars, it wasn't recorded. Apparently, these were so private that I don't understand why you wouldn't even have the recording going. I don't know, man. That's wild. that there was no record made. Did they not have an audio recording? Don't all courthouses have audio recording now?
Well, I'll say one difference about this sidebar was they had some special COVID-19 procedure where rather than walking up to the bar to speak with the judge, they all sat in their seats and put on headphones and mics, and they communicated that way.
Oh my God. The world has gone mad. This is insane. And if you're going to do something that high tech, why can't you audio record that? Yeah, dude. I've never seen a clearer call for a new trial. All right, well, we're running out of time quickly. Subsection J, the cumulative effect of the multiple errors in these proceedings deprived Chauvin of fair trial. Okay, so this is the totality of the circumstances thing. I guess in Minnesota they call it cumulative effect of numerous errors, meaning so many things went wrong, so terribly wrong that he was denied a fair trial and therefore he should have a new trial. So that is the motion for new trial. As I said, 2 days after this was filed, the feds filed an indictment against Derek Chauvin on different grounds. But first, let's go through the chat. Oh, also, while we're addressing the chat here, visit the newsletter, and once I'm done with going through the chat, I'm going to post it again. Go to the newsletter and sign up for the email list so that you can get the newsletter this Friday. Freedom Falcon asks whether we can expand on the interest of justice grounds. Yes. It's basically like, that's not fair. I think that's the easiest way to explain it. It's against the interest of justice for this to go forward. It is so heinous and so obviously against justice and our concept of it and the interest of having a fair judicial system that it should be dismissed. I don't know what the ticket was dismissed for. I don't know the specific circumstances of that. In your case, Freedom Falcon, but in this case it's saying these things are so bad that if you allowed this to go on and you didn't give him a fair trial, or you didn't give him a new trial, the judicial system's integrity would be at stake. It's not in the interest of justice. Let's see. What else we got going on here in the chat? Johnny McIver says, "You have a lovely voice. You should do voiceovers." Thank you, Johnny. I will point you to a voiceover I did. Have you ever seen the movie Hotel Transylvania? With Adam Sandler, he's Dracula. Well, Zoomers made a meme where he's jumping around at a concert, and it's me reading Dr. Kaczynski's Industrial Society and Its Future. So that's my big voiceover work. Thank you for the compliment. All right, we got people plugging Plutarch in here along with Thucydides. I love how cerebral this show has become.
I love Plutarch. Love him.
Plutarch, Lives of the Caesars. I wish I could have... This is new ideas. I wish I could have the will and discipline like Augustus does so I could be the role model my children deserve. That's my truth. My God, that might be the nicest thing anyone has ever said about me. Thank you. I don't even know how to respond to that except by saying thank you. Let's see. Keep going down. Keep going down. Confidential informants. Oh. Thank you. Speaking of confidential informants, I'm coming out with 2 new things, and you heard it first. All 21 of you still listening after an hour and a half of this show. You heard it first here on the program, all right? I've got 2 new things coming out. Besides this whole marketing thing that's happening next week, between Friday and Monday. First of all, and my sons are listening to this, so they will know this. Now you heard it first here, young gentlemen. I'm going to be publishing a book on Father's Day. It's going to be called The Education of the Prince. And this is going to be a letter of instruction to my sons, all 4 of them, on their education, on how to become men, on virtue, the importance of athleticism, all these things. I'm going to publish that on Father's Day. The second thing that is going to come out, I don't want to tell you the title because I'm so proud of it that I don't want it getting jacked before I publish it. But it's going to be basically a legal primer for people who are of a certain political persuasion. And I'll have more news about that later on. But speaking of confidential informants, we could do an entire... In fact, when I do publish that book, we will do an episode just on that. We will talk about nothing but that for the full 2 hours.
Right.
Dodging... not... Basically, right? How to survive jail, how to talk to police, how to deal with your employers or just operate in the workplace without getting yourself fired or otherwise railroaded, how to deal with the media when you get put in the media, how to navigate things with your family once things like that start happening. Yeah, we could spend days on that. 2 hours.
Do you have an ETA for that book?
Say what?
Do you have an ETA for that book?
It's going to be in the next couple weeks. I'm actually aiming for the end of the month. By the end of the month. It's not a, I don't like using the word book. It's not a book. It's more a primer. It's going to be very short. And I feel like when I say book, people are expecting a 700-page tome, like Set the World on Fire. I've written so many, published so many thousands of pages. Written, you don't even want to know how many tens of thousands of pages I've written. It's got to be unhealthy. But so this is going to be like child's play. Like it's a primer. It's going to be several pages, but it's going to be very condensed bullet point stuff, not, poetic, flowery stuff for pages and pages bearing my soul. It's going to be very practical advice. Don't face anyone when you are urinating in jail. That's a pretty clear-cut piece of advice, right? Don't talk to the police without a lawyer. Pretty clear-cut. I might expand on some things here or there, but it's going to be very much practical advice, very black and white, and there's going to be a massive disclaimer. Call your lawyer. Because it's not legal advice, right? I can't give legal advice in all 50 states and Canada and Mexico, right? I can only give legal advice to my clients on their specific cases, the specific facts of their cases. So the main advice in this primer is going to be contact your lawyer. And we hope that will be us. So, confidential informants, yeah, we'll talk about that in that episode once that thing is published. So... Destin Beach asks, Augustus, are you planning on running for public office? Stay tuned. I miss his public speeches and interviews, blunt and to the point. Why, thank you. There needs to be a voiceover meme. Okay. Well, as promised, here is the link for the newsletter. Please sign up for that. You will get the newsletter this Friday. And we will keep on trucking. I got concept of the political. Oh, nice. Rundus242 is saying he got concept of the political and started reading it when I talked about it. He says he read 2 pages and he thinks I need to break it down. Okay, so for those of you who were not here for that episode, concept of the political is a very important work by Carl Schmitt. Carl Schmitt is my favorite legal philosopher of all time. And concept of the political is where he puts forth his concept that politics means the distinction between a friend and an enemy. And I keep saying we're going to do an episode on Carl Schmitt. I promise you, Rundus, one day we are going to do that. And concept of the political will be front and center of that. All right. Now, last thing on the agenda for today. 2 days after the motion for new trial, the feds filed charges against him in the District Court of Minnesota. Let's just read it. Derek Chauvin was employed as a police officer. There's another defendant, also employed as a police officer with Minneapolis Police Department. 2 more defendants.
These are all of the police officers involved in the George Floyd arrest.
Right, and they're filing these criminal charges against all of them. Yep. All 4 of these officers. Grand jury alleges that George Floyd was this, that, and the other. Count 1, deprivation of rights under color of law. Derek Michael Chauvin, while acting under color of law, and while aided and abetted by officers known to the grand jury, willfully deprived George Floyd of the right, secured and protected by the Constitution and laws of the United States, to be free from an unreasonable seizure, which includes the right to be free from the use of unreasonable force by a police officer. Specifically, defendant Chauvin held his left knee across George Floyd's neck and his right knee on Floyd's back and arm, as George Floyd lay on the ground, handcuffed and unresisting, and kept his knees on Floyd's neck and body even after Floyd became unresponsive. This offense resulted in bodily injury to and the death of George Floyd, all in violation of Title 18 United States Code Sections 242 and 2.
And it would be a good idea to read that law. And I want to get your take on this.
Do you have it up already?
Yeah.
All right, let's read it.
Whoever under color of any law, state, blah, 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 under law, or immunity secured or protected by the Constitution or laws of the United States, or to different punishments, pains, or penalties, on account of such person being an alien, or by reason of his color or race, than are prescribed for the punishment of citizens, shall be fined, and it goes into the punishment. So it's saying that you're violating somebody's rights because of their race. That's what this code is.
Really?
And I don't see that being alleged in the indictment that Chauvin did this because he was racist. This is the first time in this entire case that he's being charged essentially for a hate crime.
Deprivation of rights under color of law. Yeah, it says nothing about race anywhere in here. That is interesting. I guess they feel like they're going to prove it at trial, or that there's not going to be a trial and he's going to take a plea to it. Because after a while, I mean, you've got to be a hero to be fighting this many cases, to be fighting something this heavy and just keep going and going and going. Usually the strategy of the state is to wear you down. That's why they put you in isolation. That's why they go to the media. That's why they go to your friends and your family and they turn them against you, or they threaten to press charges against them. Or, I remember one heinous case I had, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I had one heinous case where this cop actually threatened to arrest my client's pregnant girlfriend and charge her with drug trafficking if he didn't take this deal where he was to become an informant. Insane.
Yeah.
So the whole point is to wear you down. Well, you don't want to take a plea? How about a month of maximum security isolation? And take a plea then, won't you? How about we hold you without bond for months while your life falls apart? You want to take a plea now? How about we just keep you there, don't tell you anything. We keep stalling the trial for months, maybe years. I knew a guy in York County Detention Center. He's been in jail for 6 years waiting for trial. Can't get bond. 6 years awaiting trial at that daycare center. Amazing. So these guys come at Chauvin. They're waiting outside. We talked about this on the show last week. Waiting outside in case he's found innocent, in case he's acquitted of the charges. He walks out of there. They're going to arrest him for this. It didn't matter. Like, they were going to get him no matter what. Now they've got him, right? So what does it matter? But then the defense files a motion for new trial that they're obviously going to win. They have to win. They have to win the motion for new trial. Derek Chauvin has to get a new trial now and go and do the... And the feds are like, no. Watch this. And they charge him with this. So it's all about wearing you down so you take a plea. So I suspect that the feds don't actually expect there to be a trial. I think the feds are saying, let's just bury him, and he'll do anything it takes to end this. And best case scenario for the feds, these other three defendants here, who, Thao, I guess that's how you pronounce his name, Kung, and Lane, they are going to be turned against Chauvin. One of them will be. One of them is going to do what the feds want. That's how they work. They pressure your co-defendants to turn on you. Learned that with the mafia, served them ever since. So that's basically what's going on. Tiger, what are your comments on this new indictment coming down?
Well, that's my big observation there, that they're literally trying him under they're essentially saying they lynched him because he was black. All of these officers. I mean, that's what it's about. I mean, they could have brought other codes against him that are just basic police brutality or something like that, but instead they chose this one that's race-based. And so
it is super interesting, but it's even more interesting that they didn't say that in the indictment. Yeah. They say it for lawyers who are going to take the time to look up the statute, but they publish this thing all over the internet and don't even say how actually this is about him being a racist. That's incredible. Everything about this case is just amazing to me.
Yeah.
Well, let's see what happens. I guess I don't know how long it's going to take the defense attorney to write the brief in support of his motion for new trial.
I'm looking forward to reading it.
yeah, we gotta talk about that. Hopefully for next week's show, because some of those things are just, I can't believe they happened. I have to say, before God and everyone else, I regret not watching that trial. I now regret it, because that had to be the most spectacular farce of a trial in American history.
It was amazing to watch. And I had to
expert witnesses.
This is not how it's supposed to go.
I remember watching the OJ trial when I was in middle school. I mean, they didn't play it every day, obviously, but they paused class and we watched the verdict happen. It was huge news. Nothing had been seen like the OJ case. Oh, I mean, there was the Manson case. Obviously, none of us were alive for that, but the OJ trial, they stopped schools and let everybody watch the verdict. So this one, maybe I should have had more of a professional interest in it. And now, catching up on it all and going back and revisiting what happened, it's just like, how could this possibly have happened? How could you have 8 expert witnesses testify to use of force? That's incredible.
And one of the craziest, just not only redundant, but even irrelevant, where they had the fireman who showed up late after everybody was gone. And they put him on the stand to talk about, and showed his body cam footage of him walk into the store and just hey, what happened? Oh, I guess I missed it, and leave it. It's like, what? Why do we have this?
What was it that Bain said? Theatricality and deception against the uninitiate. So going back to the comments here, because we are out of time, Destin Beach says, Put out some merch. Put some merch out again, Augustus. Oh, stay tuned. Oh, there's merch coming out. Believe it. We are going to shill this show like you've never seen. We're going to build this audience to Nick Fuentes numbers. You better believe it. And you will buy our shirts. And you will super chat us. And you will make us filthy rich lawyers. Any thoughts about the police testifying at their own murder trial? Last question of the night. Manhog Bear asks this. Tiger, what do you think?
Is he talking about why Chauvin chose not to testify?
Yeah, I guess he's asking, is it a good idea for them to testify?
So, yeah, I should have mentioned about this. So Chauvin, he was on, we watched him just choose and decide not to testify. And initially I was thinking he would, because, that police officers often do, that he's been a cop for 20 years. He's been on the stand a million times, I'm sure. But now we know why he did not, because one of the federal charges, it wasn't in this indictment, but it's going to be coming down, is against him for an incident where he hit some other suspect with a flashlight. And a cop like him has got a million incidents like that. And especially with the way this trial was ran, if he was on the stand, he would have been as a brutality for sure. So that is why he did not testify.
Yeah, so to your question is that it depends. That is always the right answer in the field of law, in this profession. It depends. So it's on a case-by-case basis. Is it good for your client to testify? I don't know. I don't know the facts of the case. So some people, especially activists, they will say, always testify in your own defense. Well, sometimes that's true because you're the only person in certain cases who can tell your side of the story. In other circumstances, it's absolutely not true because maybe you've got 6 felonies under your belt and they're going to question you about all of those. Or maybe you're a shifty person who is not a people person and whom the jury is not going to trust. Who knows? It could be anything. And it's up to your lawyer and you together on a case-by-case basis to determine whether you should testify on your own behalf. Agatha is demanding coffee mugs as part of this merch. So is gun limited ammo. All right, well, I guess we will have coffee mugs coming out next week, won't we? Closing thoughts for the night.
Yeah, since we were talking about watching trials, one of the things I think people should do is just pick a case, pick a true crime case that you hear about and follow it. And I don't mean like a big publicity one like these, but just some local murder trial or something, and see what the web sleuths are talking about it and follow it very closely, because that will give you a very quick education in what a real, normal criminal case looks like and procedure. And you will learn a lot. And you will learn about how police officers normally keep a lot of their information close to their chest about what's going on. They don't divulge everything to the public about what happened. Things like that. And then you can contrast it with these high publicity cases, and you'll see there's a very big difference in how everything is handled and how everything goes down. And another one of the things you'll learn is, if you follow true crime, is how many especially egregious, horrifying cases happen that few people know about. Bodies dismembered, things like that. I mean, I won't go into all the cases, but there's a lot out there that happen that you just never hear about.
Trace, those hearings are also open to the public. Hearings, trials. So if you're following Tiger's advice there, you can sit in on the hearings. You can see it for yourself live.
I'll tell you how to do that, because my wife and I, we do that on occasion. So if you ever want to see a trial, you can literally just walk into the courthouse. Obviously you have to go through security. But even today, even with these COVID-19 things, I did it just a few days ago. Just poke your head into a courtroom. Sometimes the bailiff, he'll be like, hey, what's going on here? But just tell him, I'm an observer. I'm just here to watch the trial. Okay, yep. Point out to you where to sit. Enjoy the show. Sometimes you can go to if you want, you could go to the court clerk and ask them what cases are going on. And some are enthusiastic about it. They'll be like, oh, you want to watch this one? They got a murder trial going on here. And, they'll tell you.
Hmm. All right, well, John Gordon Mead asks, Augustus, do you still have any pending charges against you? Yes, Carolina. Hope to be in trial this August. I hoped to be in trial last April when it was scheduled, but life happens. Not my choice, I'll tell you that. And Rundus asks, are you going to be a guest on JF's show again, perhaps? I would love to be on JF's show. I love JF. He's a great guy. Amazing guy. Can't say enough good things about him. Huge supporter of JF. And my closing advice for the night is to crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. Good night, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Wake up, the real nightmare begins.